Clint,
Colette,
we're here.
this is weird.
We are in person. When was the last time I have seen you in person?
I can't remember. Like, truly. Maybe last time at SRECon, actually.
A year ago?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Well, happy 2025.
It's exciting.
We're trying to survive. Dave Woods.
I have survived all of 2025 so far.
Yeah. Dave Woods is encouraging us to survive and adapt and be poised to adapt even more. We're at SRECon in Santa Clara. We're in a room. It's the Magnolia Room. Tom Cruise is not here with us.
It's full of incident, curious, resilient people.
And by people, we mean our friends Will and Eric are here. There might be some games being played in the lobby. Also, it's really noisy out there.
And there are free drinks somewhere.
Yeah. We don't have a lot going for us here today, except for Eric and Will, who are actually probably all we need.
I agree. I think they should introduce themselves, actually. So, Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Dobbs. I am, what do you usually do with, I should introduce my title or company I work for? I'm a principal incident analyst.
Okay, I was going to say, you don't have to spill the beans if you don't want to. If you do want to talk about your capitalist day job, feel free.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll skip no, it's fine. I work for Indeed.
Cool.
I'm in a funny position where my job title and even my job description includes incident analyst, but my work doesn't anymore. For reasons. The company changed in May, and so I have thoughts about that. What else can I tell you? I'm a programmer and a martial artist and a father and a skier. And all of those things require a lot of adapting.
Yes.
Maybe that's enough for now.
Yay.
Eric is an old friend of both of ours.
Yes.
We've known him for some time now. Will, come as close as you like and introduce yourself. Will, also an old friend.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a staff engineer. I've been doing an excellent job of pretending like I know what I'm talking about and somehow tricking people into believing that I'm really good at thinking about incidents when I'm basically just taking what, Allspaw and Woods and Cook to say and then repeating it at just a slightly watered down level. And that seems to work really well so far in my career. So I'm digging that part of it. And I'm at SRECon and I'm hanging out with a ton of lovely incident nerd friends. And that's a good time.
Yeah, the hallway track has been like super fun today. Eric and I were just having a conversation with John Bellingcamp, which he might join us in here later. Benninghoff, maybe? I can't remember. I feel terrible. But John, you know who you are, about MTTR. He is holding tightly to the idea that there's something there.
There's got to be something.
There's got to be something because so many people have these lived experiences. And we were just talking about it with him while we hastily shoved food in our faces before recording this. And I have a hypothesis. I'm curious what you and Will think, as Eric shared, which is that it actually does provide a result for people at the very beginning of their journey. Because so many of the things that are in that MTTR are under your control and big at the very beginning of, even when you pay attention at all. Just recording MTTR will reduce MTTR in the first few cycles. And that's just the measurement. They're like, look, we started paying attention to this and investing in it, and now our MTTR went down. So let's keep investing. And my hypothesis is that people get fooled into thinking that that's going to continue.
That's an interesting hypothesis.
There might be some traumas at play for Colette.
Can I just say, for the record, I really hope that in the next 5 years, I get to come to an SRECon where I can go 24 hours without talking about MTTR. So that's the first thing I want to say about that. And the second thing I want to say is like, look, if you don't have automated rollback, if you don't have meaningful tests in your pipeline, if you don't have all the other guardrails that different systems of different types can have and you can put in and yada, 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 if you don't have any of those and you want to do them, and do you think you'll see some improvement in your MTTR? Maybe. Yeah. Is there a possibility that an incident could come along that doesn't get helped by any of those things and fucks your MTTR? Yes. And so does that mean that those things were bad and useless because they didn't end up reducing your MTTR? No. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
No,
I'm tired.
I think we're in full agreement. It's just so much MTTR. Like, no, I think we're in full agreement. Like the conversations that we're having now are better than the ones that we had a year ago and 2 years ago.
Thank God.
So I see motion. I see more people who've been clued into the fact that like this is a strange world we live in, where a lot of people are dogmatically interested in a metric that's mathematically wrong.
Will, do you have to talk about MTTR at work?
Yes, but I can also say, like, I don't agree with it. Here's the so yeah, that'll probably help. Actually, talking into a mic is usually useful. That's the fun thing. So I got hired at Microfauna Labs. They hired me because they wanted someone with opinions on incidents. They might get it. Sorry. So I've been, as Dr. Woods would say, doing guerrilla tactics to try to, get us thinking differently. And I'm sorry, Colette, because we talked about lunch yesterday. I just dropped that in the middle of the lunch. You're like, oh, well, I could have had a nice, lovely lunch, talk with some friends, and now we have to argue about this. I do apologize. On record, what I will say is I do need to talk about that, but I don't have to agree with it necessarily. We've got templates. I'm at booth duty, and we have it on the board behind me. And what happens if I say no? Well, let's experiment to find out. I do think that, I'll say, competitors and other people in the industry are starting to go, maybe not MTTR. And my goal is to not get caught behind that curve. I sincerely believe MTTR is not effective at doing what we want it to do. And we could rehash it right here. But like the argument I always say is, would you rather have an hour of downtime for your front end, maybe some misplaced CSS files or something like that, or just a pixel out of place versus 10 minutes of your database down? Like, those are both incidents, and the time being down is what you're tracking. And so you say, well, yeah, we reduced it, by 1/6. Is that good? I'd say no. The impact is what you're looking to track, and we don't have the metric that says this is what your impact is. I don't believe there is the metric for any given company because it's going to vary. So people are saying, well, you have to give us something, so we're just going to use MTTR.
Also, I'm really, really looking forward to when somebody tries to tell me that they know precisely what the impact of a specific incident was and that they can measure it precisely too. Like the sheer idea that you can know that is like, I'm like, cool, are you omniscient as well? Can you tell me, like the astrologers told me that everything's going to be okay by May of this year? Did you hear my spiel about that this morning at breakfast? Oh, so I'm like I don't consider myself like a woo-woo person. I don't. But I do dabble in listening to astrologers. All of the major astrologers called that Trump was going to get elected. And also all of them said that like by May of this year, it's all going to be okay. And like, first of all, what the fuck does that mean? Does that mean society will collapse and it won't matter? Does that mean something? Anyways, whatever. My point is they clearly know that it's all going to be okay. So we must be omniscient and understand precisely what the impact of some bits moving around the internet across multiple time zones and people must be.
So I'm gonna do a thing that I can't believe I'm gonna actually do on a recording. Let's do it. I'm gonna actually make a case. I'm gonna explain the conversation that we just had at the bar. And I did actually have a drink, and so maybe I'm just drunk, and that'll explain why I'm actually doing this defense of MTTR. What I liked about the data that John's got and Stephen Davidovich wrote a paper. He's a researcher at Google, wrote a paper that, to my mind, definitively proves with math that MTTR is a worthless metric, particularly for making any kind of a reliability decision. Don't trust me. Go look at the math yourself. But it's founded on a Monte Carlo simulation. And what's interesting about John's data is that he reran the Monte Carlo simulation with some different parameters, and came to a conclusion that, in fact, there are cases where MTTR serves you. And so I'll briefly paraphrase the experiment that was in the Monte Carlo simulation from Davidovich. He looked at randomized incident data modeled off of real incident data from, I think it was 3 different companies. And in the simulation, put the test subject into, imagine that we have a magic improvement that improves our time to resolve by 5%. And what do I get out of the data once I've done that? Do I have a decision-worthy signal? And his evidence is no, it's completely swamped by the variability. That when I have a guaranteed 5% improvement in MTTR, the distribution of my collection of incidents over the Monte Carlo simulation are you've got about 51% of the decision actually helping you, which is the toss of a coin. So there's no decision value, even if you've got guaranteed 5% improvement. So the simulation that John was doing was sort of experimenting, well, what if you turn that percentage up a notch? And what he found is if you can make a 100% improvement, if you can cut the time to resolve in half, then you get, your MTTR is actually helping you measure an improvement. And his other qualifier, and I didn't quite follow this part of his data, is that it's sort of over a 2-year time period. So for me, the big insight is if your practices are sufficiently immature that you can actually have your time to resolve, probably you didn't have observability, or probably you didn't have a canary rollback.
You probably aren't doing DevOps. You're probably doing like staged releases every 2 weeks with big batches that fucking take you down every time. Maybe don't do that. I don't know.
But what I like about it for me is that as the guy who's usually in the room trying to hit people over the head with Davidovich's math and say, look at the math. You're asking for quantitative data, and this is definitively destroying the thing you're trying to measure. It's really useful for me to instead be saying, look, I know you have this experience that MTTR served you, and I guess I can understand why. Your organization was probably not as mature as could have been, and you were able to see something, but the diminishing returns come fast. The ability to keep having your time to resolve is like you're going to do that in maybe the first 6 months or the first year of establishing some basic reliability practices. And after that, I'm here to tell you that the variability of your incidents are too wide.
And here's the thing. Yeah. This is where I get to. We can get into a room with a bunch of people and come up with these better practices. We can hear them from the experience of others. And we don't need to spend all of the time instrumenting our shit to get the precise MTTR metrics and then spend all the time in the room arguing about whether that incident lasted 5 minutes longer or not. I think it's a distraction.
I'm entirely with you on that. And this is where I'm not going to argue with you anymore, because in fact, I'm the guy who wrote the article about the hazards of counting nines. And we can put that link on your notes. I'm always happy to put that out there. And just so I can add, I wrote that story because I hear leaders say, well, what harm, we need some measurement. What harm could it do? And I'm here to tell you I saw a horror story from doing the measurement with a calculator that was actually what I think most software companies want in terms of like rigorously measured kind of quantitative data about the time in your incidents. And it was such a tax on the business that only my team who were building the calculator could really see. And so I go read my horror story, and I don't have to burn the rest of the time on here ranting what I've already put on the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely worth reading. And I think like this is the thing that I keep coming back to, whether we're talking about MTTR or root cause analysis or uptime and then the lie that is that like all of this obscures how messy the system really is, how messy the reality is, how many things are out of our control. And I asked Dave Woods a question yesterday when he was doing his Ask Me Anything. And it was, our leaders really want to make judgments, but we're asking them to think. And like thinking sucks. like thinking gets you into all sort of dark places. And like we're all trying to build better ways to think and influence our thinking. But like they're still going to want the judgments. And so if we give in and we say, well, yeah, here's your judgment metric, they're going to make the judgments. They're not going to read our report. Hey, yeah, come on. Hello, we have a guest. We have a new guest. I will hand you a mic and you can introduce yourself.
My name's Juan. We going the whole thing?
Relax. Say hi. What brought you to SRECon?
Yeah, so I work at SailPoint, and I'm in charge of our observability stack there. So I'm here to learn about SLOs, SLIs, what SRE looks like at other companies, amongst observability at other places. So
my camera turned off. All right, well, keep talking to Colette while I figure it out.
You can still chat. It's fine. We lost our camera for a second.
Yeah. I mean, how's your experience been here at SRECon? What have you guys been talking about before I got here?
We were talking about MTTR, Juan. So please save us, deliver us from evil. Anything else? Juan, we got a question from a reader. Have you seen our podcast before? It's okay if you say no. Sweet. Okay, so what we try to do, I guess the theory of our podcast is that resilience engineering, we like resilience engineering, but often we don't actually think we understand it. Or it's very academic, I would say. A lot of like the resilience engineering talk. Did you catch Dave Woods this morning?
Caught him at the opening of the morning, yeah.
Did you, what
I think about the talk?
Yeah.
I ingested some of it. It felt very high level. I'm not too familiar with his work
and
or anything like that.
Like, look, we're going to have Dave Woods on. He's fucking amazing. I'm very excited to have him as a guest. We have to figure out something good to talk about. But this, I would say, we came up with the idea for this podcast because we wanted to be practical. And so we asked people to write in questions, like related to resilience engineering, but like that are practical about their like things that they want answered, right? And one of the questions that came in the other day that I really love, is I've listened, someone said, I've listened to like the first 4 episodes of your podcast, and I still don't think I can really I still don't think I really understand what resilience engineering is, as opposed to like reliability engineering. Please come sit at the table. You don't have to sit at the table if you don't want to be on camera or whatever. Like, you don't have to talk if you don't want to talk.
Anyway, it's dead.
But, so like, I'm curious, like, are you familiar with resilience engineering as a concept? Like, what do you have thoughts on what it is?
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing that term, so I'm interested to learn a little bit more about it. Because another thing I'm learning is a lot of things that I'm hearing, I'm seeing some of it at SailPoint where I'm at. It's just maybe not defined that way, or we're doing it a little bit differently. So, how would you define resilience?
You just killed Colette. Yeah.
So I like there. Okay, so I'm gonna do the I'm going to do the R's talk for a second. Robustness. A lot of people use resilience and robustness interchangeably in our world. Robustness is ostensibly things you can sort of plan ahead for, like we're a consumer business and it's the holiday, Black Friday's coming up, and so we're going to add capacity to our, whatever, like be able to expand our ability to serve 10 times the customer flow in whatever web property we have, right? That's robustness, the ability to plan for that.
Wouldn't that make it more resilient, Colette?
Clint, I'm so glad you asked. If you want it to be more resilient during your Black Holiday thing, what you do is you maybe have your staff share some stories about last year's Black Friday with the staff there. You'd maybe staff a couple extra people to be on call during that time. Because resilience is about what you can't really actually plan for. The things that you don't know, like that you can't foresee. And it's about creating adaptive capacity in your systems so that they can stretch when the unexpected happens. Now, in any system, the adaptive capacity of any system is human. It's not technical systems are by their nature not as elastic, right? And so when we talk about, so those two definitions are there. So when we talk about resilience engineering, what we talk about is doing things, engineering things, I'm very vague here, I'm sorry, in a way that you increase the adaptive capacity of a system to be able to respond to the unknowable, unplanned, unexpected events that it faces. There are ways that you can understand whether you have been good at that kind of only in hindsight. And there are a lot of interesting case studies in the world of like healthcare and stuff like that, where you can like look back and see both where resilience has sort of existed and you can see it in that sort of hindsight way. There are very few case studies where one has looked at it from a like engineering forward perspective rather than looking backward at something that but there is a very great case that has been there was a paper and a case study done that Beth Adele Long and Richard Cook did about New Relic. And so I really am excited to have them on to have Beth on the podcast to talk through that. Yeah. So.
Is that all perfectly clear?
Yes. Totally clear as mud, right?
Well, thanks for coming. We have a couple more folks who wandered in. The camera's dead, by the way, so it is not robust.
It won't be on camera.
It disconnected. You want to like pause it, or you can point it at us. I don't know.
Maybe I'll just turn off camera.
Yeah,
we won't do.
No
camera.
one wants to see us.
No.
But I just want to give people a chance to introduce themselves. So, John, we were actually talking about you before, and I'm gonna have to. I may ask you not to bring up MTTR. Which I think you might actually be okay with. You're giving me the thumbs up. But yeah, just introduce yourself and tell us why you're here.
Yeah, so hi, I'm John Meddinghoff. I've been on a long journey to get here. As I talk about, it actually started with my grandfather, who was an airline pilot, flew for over 60 years, not all of that professionally. And from him, I learned the importance of checklists as an adult, because I remembered when I was a kid that when he would take us up in his plane, he would always run the checklist. And as an adult, I realized, man, this guy has flown thousands of times, and yet he still runs the checklist. It must be important. And so that really sparked my interest in safety, and kind of that's what led me here. I do actually want to take a shot at resilience engineering. I think it's a very tricky concept to understand, but actually the late Richard Cook, I think I saw recently a talk that he gave on drawing an analogy with the resilience of bone. So bone is resilient because it's constantly rebuilding itself. And so when you're injured, because it's constantly rebuilding itself, it allows your bones to actually heal itself, right? So there's this kind of inherent resilience in bone. And the first type of resilience engineering is actually taking advantage of that natural resilience of bone and setting of bones and using casts is a very old technology. And so people learned that bone will heal itself. And if you can actually help that process by engineering a cast, which actually helps your bone heal in a way that's more effective than if it's just kind of left to itself and it kind of heal in a way that's like basically leaves you maybe, permanently injured or disfigured. He also talks about a second form of resilience engineering, which is only recently discovered, which is much more advanced, which is actually taking advantage of the manipulating the process of bone reconstruction in a way that actually allows you to do clever things. I wish I could remember more. It's a great talk. But I mean, I think for me, we are at the stage of resilience engineering where we have to take advantage of the natural resilience of people. And leverage that when things go wrong, things go badly with technology. It's the resilience of the people who are surround us that actually help us recover from disaster. So, I guess what I have to say for now. So, and I won't talk about MTHER, I promise.
I do feel like we learn a lot from aviation, right, and medicine. And part of the reason is like the consequences of failure there are so much higher, right? And immediately felt like.
I don't know, as Richard Cook said, losing $300 million could buy a lot of vaccines.
Yeah. That is that one haunts me.
Yeah.
Like when we will say like no one dies in an incident. So why do we say postmortem? But like capitalism is at play and it is the controlling factor of people's lives.
There are countless ways that we can think of incidences that lead to people's deaths. Certainly to their illness, certainly to their reduced, comfort or status or capabilities in the world. Like, I think it's time that we don't discount or the seriousness with which incidents can cause things. And I think in medicine, in a trauma room, sorry, I've been binge watching The Pit while I've been here at SRECon. So I just go, when I need to retreat from humanity, I just go up to my room and I watch The Pit. So I've been watching, a simulated ER, dramatic ER for all week. But I think it's like, at least in those rooms and those spaces everyone is very focused on life is at stake and health is at stake. And I think what's very scary about engineering overall is that a lot of engineers who are working on systems don't have that direct visceral connection to understanding how what they're doing or how the systems that they're working with could have an impact on the other side. I think in some ways that's scarier, right?
It is. And I think we actually, as SREs, sometimes try to build that distance. Like when one of the things I notice about making SLOs is that SRE's first inclination is like CPU or up at all type SLOs, right? Like, but the reality is what you want is like user pain and user success. And if you're not measuring those good events, bad events, you're not really facing up to the fact that you may be like ruining someone's day.
Does anyone else have thoughts on resilience?
Yeah. But we've got one more introduction.
We do. My computer just went to sleep. Yes, one more person has walked in the room. So
I don't think they want to be introduced. Oh, okay.
Are we all introducing ourselves?
We can.
You don't have to. But I
you
hope
can
you
be
will,
anonymous.
You're a friend.
Sure.
You can say anonymous friend.
Happy to not be an anonymous friend. I mean, Martin Smith, I am an SRE at NVIDIA. I think, as far as, are we all answering a question like about resilience, or are we just...
What brought you here tonight, Mark?
Yeah. So I think it's actually that I'm a bit of a fanboy for the podcast because I've worked with and Clinton. I feel like a lot of times when I listen to the podcast, it's like a little bit of as a presenter said earlier today, everyone needs a therapist, and it's nice to hear people talking about the same challenges and influencing organizations, and like in a lot of ways, the resilience stuff we've been talking about is about like a whole new lens at how humans are part of the problem and the solution, but actually humans are the reason that I feel like that when I hear them talking about the work that they do, I go, oh, I can relate to that too. It's like, it's very much therapeutic to sort of hear what people are going through to influence their organizations as well. So it's humans all the way down for me. And yeah, that's my intro.
I'm so happy you're here, Martin.
Yeah, weirdly, this is like a work reunion too.
Yeah.
Epic proportions. Yeah, I don't know. The conference has been, I feel like for the last couple of years, the resilience folks
for taking over.
Kind of taking over SRECon.
And we had an epic party last night. So
that's true. We had a nice reception, right? Put on by Incident.io. We should mention that because they did pay for it, and that was very nice.
The Resilience and Software Foundation got Incident.io to hang out, like sponsor an event and a churro bar, epic churro bar.
That was a churro bar, the cream-filled ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is great. Somebody just handed me back one of the cards that we were handing out.
I got some, going to do some free promo here. Moo.com overnighted me some sweet cards for the Resilience and Software Foundation, and they have a QR code on the back. So we're handing them out to people who are not members in case they want to join and see what it's all about. Thanks, Moo.com. And you know who saw it and was like, Moo.com and Allspa?
Yeah.
Of all of the John Allspa. Of all the people in my life that have John, it's like, also what's the place that makes the balance boards and the really ergonomic?
Fluid
I have
Stance?
the whiteboard. Yeah, Fluid Stance. So I have like all of the Fluid Stance whiteboards, and it's John Allspa's fault. And it's like, I feel like John understands like aesthetic accessory world. Don't talk to John about DevOps or resilience engineering is my point. Talk to him about stylish decorative office supplies.
It might be surprising. It might be shocking. Yeah. Did anybody who's here at the table go to a talk today that just like changed their mind or made them think differently? Colette is shaking a mic at people. Don't touch the part that turns it off.
I don't have an answer to that question. I was going to take one more swing at the resilience thing. Can I do that?
Go for it.
Instead, it's the part of the bone talk about the fact that bone is under continuous repair. And there's a thing that Dr. Cook doesn't exactly say out loud, but it's in the examples he gives in the talk. We know a ton about humanity because bone sticks around for millennia. And so one of the examples is a woman who had a broken femur and lived to tell about it. He doesn't say out loud, but he's an anesthesiologist. Broken femur is a life-threatening injury. And the way we know that she survived is that the bone stitched back together, and it wasn't splinted the way. So we know something about their medicine. They were not able to put sufficient traction on the leg to get the bone realigned, but she would have survived and walked with this hobble because the bone refused into this shorter overlapped limb. And So we can deduce from that she lived in a civilization and was important enough to that community that they carried her around until her leg was healed enough that she could walk on it again. And that's already sort of an extraordinary story about the civilization in question. He doesn't really talk about that particular piece, but I have this other backstory on bone. But that continuous repair, Fred Hebert brought this up in the call. You've had him on before, and of course he's a fountain of insight.
And bad ideas, which we'll get to.
The thing that we believe about our systems is that they're mostly stable, like the bones that we find in a grave. And we don't see that, in fact, the bone we live with is under this continual repair. And the systems that we actually have are not standing and then find some wild disturbance. They're like we're balancing a broom on our hand, and we're constantly meddling to keep the thing balanced. And because that balancing act is invisible, we're continually repairing the balance of the systems we're in. We don't see the resilience that we're doing in a similar fashion to our views about bone. So the thing that makes it hard for us to even talk about resilience, because resilience, we're all about what's the recovery after a failure, because we're not watching the fact that, no, there's somebody actively balancing that broom.
Yeah, I think that's getting a little bit into like Sidney Dekker too. Like we're so focused and so negatively biased that we're like, oh, I dropped the stick, right? I dropped the broomstick, and I'm mad and I failed, and I'm thinking about that. But like for a few minutes before that, you balanced a broomstick in a chaotic situation, right? And you can't even explain how you did it. It just happened. And that does feel like some of why it's hard to talk about resilience, is because it's happening. It's gonna happen. And resilience engineering is we're gonna try to shape it. We're gonna try to change it. Whereas before, it's not that we invented resilience, right?
No. Resilience is all around you all the time.
Yeah, it's been happening, and
it happens in your organizations, whether you want it to or not. And
some of the default modes are toxic, and like with the talk this morning, the second keynote about we're all just people who want to run to the fire. Definitely felt very seen in that moment. I was also making the point to some people we're all kind of people pleasers. We all have these traumas, and we just want to make people happy and make everyone okay. And that's the default resilience mode that we got good at being sysadmins or SREs because we're comfortable in that. But resilience engineering is saying, hang on, you can set boundaries. You can actually make this a positive experience, and you'll still get the same result. You don't have to go put a cape on and be a hero anymore. That's what's been very attractive about it to me.
You also don't have to be the expert, because, and I think this has been interesting, right? To talk to some folks about SRE in the hallway track. It's well, but these devs, they're building these systems, and they're just not architecturally correct, or they're just not doing this thing.
They just don't get it.
They just don't understand. And I have to say, babe, what system is architecturally correct? And what the one in your head, or the one any one in reality, right? And then what I loved about the talk this morning, this was a talk after Dr. Woods. Katie Wilde, yeah. Just incredible talk. And she, she didn't quite say it, but she sort of said it, which was do you want to be right, or do you want to make change? And it is, you have to make a choice. You have to let go of your desire to be right, and you have to move into a world where your goal is to make probably small, probably incremental change. And it can't be about right or wrong. It has to be about meeting people where they're at and taking them on a journey, going on a journey with them.
Yeah, I think there was a question from the audience about how some of us feel in like a sort of ethical obligation to be right or to do the right thing. And I think a response was that ethics is sort of nonsense on stilts, which I've never heard that one. That must be a South African saying, but I love it. But I that's the point that she was trying to make, was like, no, we need to make changes so that our lives are better. Like we have these, I think the talk was the perverse incentives of SRE, which was very like, I have to sit in this room and listen to this because we all feel the perverse incentives. Mm-hmm.
I especially like that comment that she made, because I had been to South Africa a number of times, and it's actually a really great analogy for resilience, because I mean, you can download an app from the government that tells you when the power is going to go out, right? And so like they have now I've been to Johannesburg, and like the power company has rocks thrown through the window. Like people don't love it. They're not big fans, but like it's been the places that are the most important have generators. I've seen where like I've seen extension cords run across hallways, like where people know where the power is, but ultimately it's like a really great example that I kind of wish she had elaborated on even further in the talk, because it was a great example of like taking an active stance with resilience of like, we know we're going to not have power. We're going to choose when and where we don't have power in a way that like preserves something we care about. So actually, though, that was a really great analogy. I kind of would love to have seen even played out further.
I was not aware of that in South Africa, but it is, I think, is a perfect example of, here's a constraint, like without a control mechanism. Mm-hmm. Like we can't possibly tell everybody to turn off their lights enough. We'll do it a little, right? We can like make progress at the margins, but the chaos is going to happen. The entropy is going to arrive. And rather than just be victims to it, that is a perfect example of resilience engineering. We're gonna make an app, and it's gonna seem absurd to the rest of the world. Like, what? You have an app that tells you when your power is going to turn off? Like, why do you have an app?
Couldn't you do something about the power?
Yeah, okay. Maybe you could build power. That's an interesting point. It is actually, in this day and age, cheaper to build an app than a power plant.
And get everybody cell phones.
That's true.
Use it.
What a strange universe we live in. Yes, Eric.
I don't even know what I was going to say. Or I'd have been handed a mic. No. Will.
Yeah, I got something. Cool. This might be following up the rock throwing thing in a way I didn't intend when I was like really thinking about it about 5 minutes ago. There's a story I like from like fantasy novels. There's a great one, King Killer Chronicles. Long story short, there's a school of magic. It's a college. One day, professor comes in and he starts ranting as soon as he walks in and says, okay, in 10 minutes, I'm going to take this stone, and shows the class exactly what the stone looks like. I'm going to throw it with yay so much force right in this direction. I want you, the brightest minds in all the world, to calculate exactly where it's going to land. Go. At first, they start scribbling on paper and trying to use all these calculations of math and trying to understand the physics of it, gauge how much the stone is weigh, how strong the professor could possibly throw. They start teaming up, start using all these probability functions, and at the end of 10 minutes, the professor says, great, where's it going to land? And they're like, we just don't know. You're right. And just as he's saying that, a page boy walks by the door of the classroom. He says, boy comes in, catch, throws it, and within half a second, the boy snatches it out of there and catches it. Professor leaps up and says, fantastic, you did great. Now, how could this young boy in a split second know exactly where the stone was going to land when the brightest minds in all the world couldn't figure out in 10 minutes beforehand? And that's how I treat robustness versus resilience. You can do all the planning in the world, and you don't know where your incident is going to land. But having caught stones out of the air before, you're able to do it again and be prepared for it. And when that suddenly is surprised by that, you can do so. That's what I like to use. What's next?
We got 5 more minutes. Yeah, we're going to have a hard stop here soon. One of the things I think we all will probably also notice is maybe we're not all diagnosed with ADHD. And some of us may have no traces of it whatsoever, but there is a large tendency for some of those traits. And one of the hallmarks of coping with ADHD is building systems for yourself. Not even surviving your family, just surviving the world when you can't focus on things, when you can't remember things, you have no object permanence. Like all these things are constraints that you find that you can't really change. You try and people tell you like, you're lazy. Why don't you do those things? And I actually think that builds the skills that leads to really good SREs. Is like, you're already used to like people handing you a bunch of shit and being like, this is normal and everyone else can do it. So figure this out. And then it gets out of hand, and you are like used to just breaking that down and turning that into a system that works for you. Whereas like when you're an application developer and you're way more focused on like abstract thinking and building a model from scratch, that actually compromises doing that. So they have ADHD tendencies as well for different reasons. But I feel like SRE folks way more like adapting to constraints that they can't move and just used to that. And the family model is similar to that. Like it's a system.
One thing I've noticed, like just recently joining a new organization, like if you're trying to figure out the difference between reliability and resilience, has been to like go find the stories of that and tell people that don't know that it's there, right? Like go find the engineer who like between waking up and taking a shower checks the database, or find out when they don't all of a sudden because something changed. And so like in a new organization, I don't know, like coming into it, how much they understand that distinction as a company or as an organization or whatever, and just like going and finding those stories and telling the rest of the org that they're happening has been one way to kind of show the organization like that there is this adaptive capacity here. You may not see it, but it's there. Like you all were just saying, that we may not notice it's happening, but it's happening all the time. So like writing it in a document can really open some eyes that had no idea that was happening. And then maybe from there you can go to a place where you sort of like more deliberately do that.
I really love that. And it reminds me of a story I heard once of I think it was like a Russian ISP. This is a while back, where there was like one sysadmin and he'd worked there for a long time. And one day he had an argument with the CEO and the CEO fired him. And like things had been peaceful and scaling and working beautifully for years. And they just like assumed he had been like doing nothing. That's why they were arguing with him. And the next day, one by one, the systems start failing, and you find out that this person was the entire source of their resilience, was just like had all these scripts and all these like little adaptations and wasn't talking to anybody about them. That invisible stuff is part of what I think resilience engineering is trying to expose and give models for, and say like, is this happening? I just want to point out that Martin has been providing resilience in our system throughout this recording, because you can't see it because the cameras aren't working anymore, because that was brittle. But like my laptop is showing us like who's making sure we're recording, and I can see it, and it's also going to sleep. And Martin just reaches over and taps the little FN key. Yeah. Now I started doing it, but I'm across the table, and I think it's actually a perfect model of like it was just like natural. Like, oh, keep the system going. Yes, you are. Yeah, you must keep pressing the button. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I hope this turns into an actual episode, recording challenges aside. We are going to edit the shit out of it, yes. But thank you so much. We are going to have a hard stop, so we have to go to the room. But yeah, we'll see you all at the conference tomorrow.